my waterfall's prettier than yours, or we have restaurants. Well, have you ever been to a place that doesn't have a restaurant? Or, and I always get the craft brewery people in our state a little irritated when I say, having a craft brewery is not a differentiator. You can't swing a dead cat in any state in the country and not hit 20 of them. Yeah. So that's the key. And I think that the differentiation here is what drove it. And I think that as an industry, people got to spend a lot of more time in there, because a lot of them they're not really commercial. They're not really advertisements that have ideas or really concepts. They're not paying off a concept. I now call them information announcements. And we don't want to do information announcements.
All right, welcome back to Over a Pint, the podcast that puts the focus on the fast-paced world of marketing. It's told through the eyes of industry veterans. Looking at this crew here, I will put a fine point on veterans. We're not talking about theory, we're talking about real-world practical experience. Joining me today, Vice President of Celtic Advertising, Mr. Kirk Ruhnke. We're missing Brian today. He couldn't make this, but you got me. I'm the Director of New Business Development over at Acedia, Pat McGovern. This is going to be a good one, man. We are joined by John Ricks, Executive Director at Nebraska Tourism Commission, and Kirk Ruhnke, Creative Director, Copywriter Extraordinaire. Guys, welcome to the podcast.
Great to have you.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks. I think you just called us old, but that's fine.
Yeah, I'm in the same category, guys. You guys got a little bit more gray.
Wasn't the word ancient? No, veteran. Those
That's
are synonymous.
Guys, as a tradition on the show, we just have to take the first few minutes, just go around here and say what we've got, what kind of pint we're knocking back today. So, Mr. Ruhnke, I'm going to start with you.
I am drinking a coffee stout by the Gathering Place Brewing Company in River West. It's good brewery. They produce good good beer, and it's great to have you guys on the show. Cheers.
Cheers.
Here.
Cheers.
Mr. Ricks, tell us about the Gatorade that you've got. And
I'm in a government office building this afternoon, so I have my favorite Gatorade Zero, great flavor, but want to put a plug in for a wonderful little craft brewery out here in Nebraska. It's called Kincaidor Brewing. Google it. I'm not really sure you can get it out there, but it's a bit. I don't know how long they've been around. 7-8 years. They've had really good success. It's really good stuff. So, and I know a couple of the owners, so I told them I'd plug them. So Kincaidor, Kinkaider, I think.
We'll do that.
If I didn't spell it right, Kirk will correct it for me.
That was correct. I'm also the spell checker here.
Yeah. Kirk, I saw you holding up something. What do you got?
I have a Torpedo Extra IPA from Sierra Nevada.
Ooh,
I only have 3/4 of a pint because that just comes in 12-ounce bottles.
Guys, and I'm knocking back one of my favorites. I know this is kind of a little bit of a lighter weight beer, but I love the Summer Shandy from Leinenkugel. That's what I've got here. Cheers, everybody.
Leinenkugel. You're here.
I'm really excited to have both of you guys on here. I spent a lot of time in the travel space, know a fair amount about it, and just get your insights and take on what you've been able to do with Nebraska, which is no small feat. But let's do this, guys. John, why don't we start with you, and we'll just kick it over to Kirk. You're executive director in Nebraska. What is that? What is all that about? I mean, what's your role? What do you do there? Give the people a little bit of flavor for what you handle.
Yeah, I mean, there's all different kind of travel offices, tourism offices across the country. Some of them are part of an economic development department. Some aren't. We are not. We're a separate commission, if you will. And I always like to sound as non-governmental as possible. It's called the Nebraska Tourism Commission. I like to go at it as Nebraska Tourism. came out of Department of Economic Development way before I was here, back I think 10 years ago. I've only been here 5. And there was interest at that time, and still is, to keep us separate because they're truly different businesses. A lot of that is business to business, and we're pretty much consumer facing. And as in many other places across the country, tourism as an economic development driver has always had a challenge being perceived as, business development, moving businesses in.
Right.
So the industry here a number of years ago said, hey, let's pull these guys out and see how it boogies. So we do not have a small staff. I think including our interns, we have 12 people. Lucky for me, they're mostly from Nebraska, so they know a lot more about the state than I do. I've been here 5 years, I'm learning. Yeah, but that's what we are. We're a government agency. We have to, we have the only unicameral legislature in the country. There are 49 senators, and there's still oversight there. If we want to introduce a new kind of a fund or change the existing rules which establish the commission, we have to go all through that process. But that's kind of what we are.
Gotcha.
And we're the marketing organization. I mean, we're the tourism marketing organization for the state.
Cool. And then Kirk, talk us about your role. How do you fit into this picture?
Well, I'm a freelancer. Been doing that for about 4 or 5 years now. And John called me up and asked me if I wanted to work on tourism. We've known each other since the Pleistocene. And yeah, he called me and said that he needed some help and he needed to bring a voice to the creative. And so this is the voice right here.
So, guys, before we get into the work, let's just take a step back, because travel has been going through just some crazy swings, right? I mean, earlier, we all know it just got a kick in the groin. There's no traveling going on, to right now where it just seems to be just super white hot. John, give us the 3,000-foot view from your perspective. What's happening in the travel space? What's going on? What are you seeing?
It has lit up significantly. We're funded by a 1% lodging tax. In other words, we're a cash-only agency. So when somebody checks into a room, it's a 1% on their bill.
Yep.
We get that, they throw it into a fund. As you can well imagine, last year it fell apart. We were down a couple $1 million. It was down 40%. It's significant. So what's happening now is, and we're grateful for it, we had 12, 13 months of what I call red months. That's the total for that month did not beat the prior year. So just as of yesterday or whatever, we're now in our 3rd month, what I call a black month. So we beat last year significantly. So we've turned the corner that way, but there's still a lot of things going on that are good, and there's still a lot of things going on that aren't so good. I mean, I've worked with the people with destination analysts a lot, and I follow their sentiment study that's kind of ongoing. Yeah. And everybody wants to travel. Almost half of Americans said over the past 3 months they have gone somewhere.
Yeah,
which is a wonderful thing. And when they went there, when they took those trips, they're even more enthusiastic about taking another one. So that's great. But at the same time, there's a couple of things. This Delta variant, for the first time, and they do this on a weekly basis, for the first time in a bit, they're again showing there is some concern expressed by consumers about people coming into their communities. So there is truly a little fear out there yet. It's going well, it's picking up, but this Delta variant is causing some concern. And almost 40% of the people during the survey, and they did it last week, said that they're a little concerned about people coming into their community. I don't think it's strong enough of a concern, even though that number did scare me a little bit. 40% is a lot. I don't think it's going to turn anything down or off, because I think the pent-up demand was just so enormous.
Yeah.
But I want to touch just on two other things, and I'll shut up. But the good old American consumer, they think that, and this is in studies and stuff, they think that the service provided by event, attraction, hotel, restaurants should be at or exceed, pre-pandemic levels, and that's just silliness. But even in our industry here, we've had some people call me up and say, "What's the matter with these people?" Because they're chewing out our people because they're not fully staffed and thing. The American consumer, they really don't understand that it's going to take a little while for all these places to become fully staffed and to roll again. And Kirk and I, the other night, were up in Omaha, and the general manager of the hotel we were at is actually on our board, and they're having so much trouble. They continue to have trouble getting employees that, like, for example, if it's busy in the hotel lobby, he's working the lobby bar.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. And the other thing that really drives me crazy, and this is thanks to the internet, everybody's looking for deals, which doesn't make any sense to me. These places have been closed. Many have been closed down for a year. Many have closed for good. But yeah, people are running around saying we expect everything to be peachy, better than it was before, and we want it to be cheaper. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So, Eddie, even though everything is going along fine, it's gonna take a while for all these bugs to work out.
Sure. Hey, John, and maybe Kirk too, you want to chime in on this. Is now that we're kind of coming through the pandemic, and I know we got the Delta thing going on here, but in your guys' estimation, is there anything that has permanently changed on the travel landscape? Like, this was what it was before, and it ain't going to be this way ever again. I don't know. I'd like to get your take.
Yeah, it might be early to tell for sure.
Yep.
I agree with you.
Place and what isn't. We're still kind of going through a process, so I think jury's out on that one.
Yep. So cool. Let's thanks for that overview on that. Let's get to the work, because this is where, let's get into that. So, John or Kirk, give us the background. You how does this campaign even begin to start taking shape? Because as Kirk and I are just, we're in the advertising space. It's just always interesting to hear the backstory of how this even came about. So, guys, just give us a little bit of that. John gives Kirk a call and goes, "Hey, you want to be in travel? Go."
Understand that Kirkus and I had worked on Wisconsin tourism right after the Pleistocene, right? Yeah.
Yeah. About 13 years we had that account.
Yeah. So we kind of knew each other from that experience, and I don't think we ever practiced this intentionally. I just think that we really both just do not like the status quo and the normal stuff floating around, and I won't speak from the creative side because he gets mad when I do that. But I will say that if you look at the position we were in, when I started here in 2017, God, I almost said 1917.
That was the other pandemic.
Oh, that's right. And we lived through that one too, doggone it. And understand that Nebraska was the least likely state for anybody to visit. And that's not me making it up. That's Portrait of American Travel out of MMGY. And we had big problems, basically three things. And this is how bad it was. Consumers didn't even consider the state a part of the travel category. So when you exist in a category and you're not considered a part of it, that's a problem. And we found that in interviewing people, because we did a boatload of research. Jennifer Simmons and things has worked, and she has worked with us back when we were with Wisconsin too. And we just discovered that we were so unknown. It's called brand apathy. And it's not that people liked us or people hated us. They just meh, and they didn't care. And indifference, I think, is a real tough thing. And then we have the old product problem or perceived product problem. This is a big state. And people just didn't think that whatever you could show them was worth the trip, because it's 7 hours coast to coast here. So those things were big. So in the research and in the work up to all this, which when we did bring Kirk on and he caught on to it pretty quickly, we knew that we had to do something to get people's attention, and it couldn't be the same old, same old. It had to be startling even. It has to be risky and edgy, and even to the point of looking how we could use it, humor or self-deprecation in it. So when we brought him on, we took him through the big strategy deck, and it is long, and your podcast have to be 2 hours before we could even crack it. But we knew that it had to be something special. And where it came from, I don't know. You have to ask him.
Well, in addition to actual research, I had some anecdotal experiences too. I mean, I had driven through Nebraska a couple of times, and the federal government didn't do Nebraska any favors when they put I-80 where they did, because it kind of goes through cornfields and some more cornfields, and occasionally you cross the river and there's a cottonwood tree, and then you're into some more cornfields, and every town seems like it's 7 miles off the interstate. I mean, you to stop for gas, you got to drive through the cornfield to get to the gas station. Just, if that's your experience, then yeah, Nebraska is going to be a tough sell. I mean, people would say that when I told them I was working on Nebraska tourism, they say, "Oh, that's got to be like pushing water uphill with a pointy stick." That's not the easiest task. So that's kind of what we were up against. There's apathy, and then when there isn't apathy, there was negative perceptions or misperceptions. There's nothing to do here. It's flat. There's no terrain even. I mean, that's what's and so there were different ways that you could approach that. You could kind of take it on in a more subtle way than we did. We took the blunt route. We just came right out and said it. Okay, we know not everyone's coming here. Okay, it's not for everyone, but there's a certain set of people who will explore and will be curious and will be open-minded enough to go to places like Nebraska where other people might, scorn and derision. They are there kind of to find out, well, how come people live here and what's the story behind this place? So that's kind of who we were going after.
And I think, guys, excuse me, Kirk, I think you guys have had Jennifer Simmons on talking. I don't know if she talked about this, but, for years, she and a few others have been working on this value-based marketing concept. So you had to find a value. And like Kirk said, rather than tiptoeing around it, we were, the work is just right in your face honest. So the honesty platform is really what really underpins all of this. And so rather than being more subtle, we just took people's perceptions right on and said, basically, that's great you think that way, but here's really the truth. And then he put the great humorous lipstick on it, if you will.
We had other thoughts or other like less direct ways of taking on the misperceptions, but we just said let's go right at it first, and then if that doesn't work, we can always retreat a little bit if we have to. But we didn't have to. We actually went in and pushed the envelope as far as we could, and did a print ad about a testicle festival.
Saw it.
And put it in front of consumers, and they said, "Oh, you could go farther than this." Well, I don't know how to go farther than that. You know,
Yeah, we were
Right.
concerned. Yeah, we were concerned about how far we could push it,
Mm-hmm.
and this stuff was pretty well developed then. And I'm just looking over because I can read the headline to you. It's about the Testicle Festival in a town north of here. It's an annual Testicle Festival where they, do the old cojones and they deep fry them, and they got this kind and that kind, and they get big adult trikes, and they drink beer and eat cojones, Rocky Mountain oysters. But we weren't going to call them Rocky Mountain oysters because that pays homage to a state nearby.
Right.
But the headline is Festivals for Everything from Mud to Testicles. And
Awesome.
it ran. And when the campaign won a big national award at Esto, you guys know what that is.
Yep.
It was like I told people, I'm at the top of the mountain. No, there's nowhere else to go because I've had an ad, a tourism ad with the word testicles in it, run in a magazine. I mean, so it can't get any better than that.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Kirk.
I was just going to say, if I could jump in quickly, a couple things. First of all, I think it's brilliant. And when you look at a lot of the tourism campaigns that are out there for different states, I mean, they are. If you look at the ads, they're absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's great photography, beautiful flowing copy. But as we all joke, it's like I could take that same headline, I could take that same mountain, I could put it on another state. Who knows where it's going to be? And Kirk, you brought up something interesting too. I tend to agree. I have been to Nebraska a number of times, and you're right. How they route I-80. I had the benefit years ago to hit the Scottsbluff, the monument, and if you get up into the Nebraska National Forest on the west, you'd be amazed. It's beautiful out there. It's not what you would necessarily expect, and unless you've been there, you don't know. And I'm looking at the copy right here. Honestly, it's not for everyone, and it's like, honestly, it's not what you would expect either, had you not had the opportunity. So when I look and I was reading the copy on the website, it just, you hit on the head. It is honest and it's in your face, and that in itself, there's something genuine about it, but it does make you stop. Because I think it's just, that's something where when you read it, you just know someone's not calling BS. It's genuine and it's honest and it's very truthful. But boy, I've never seen anything like that when it comes to state tourism campaigns. That just was one where, like, I've never seen something like this. I've never seen this approach. Was there a plan B? I got to ask the question. Was there ever a plan B? Like, hey, listen, this is our A approach, but what if someone doesn't? I'm just kind of curious. Or was it all in on this one?
I think plan A was we were all in on it, but also we had a plan B kind of. I mean, we had other things. You try to cover the waterfront with ideas, So there are ways to deal with people's negative thoughts about you, and basically say you weren't expecting this, but here's what the truth about Nebraska is. You can say it that way, but it's not. It's like in your face. And like you said, everything in the tourism business is like, show me a waterfall and a forest, and you show me some lake. The root word of differentiate is differ. So I mean, we have to do something that's going to set us apart. We can't just say we've got waterfalls and we've got lakes, because everybody's got them, and we're just saying the same thing as everybody else does then, and we're just blending in, and we don't have enough money to blend in.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The thing is,
which is practically unlimited. They can talk about everything and appeal to everyone, and we can't, and we're not trying to. So that's.
I mean, the other thing is too that, as we said before, we've both been fiddling in destination marketing for a long time, and personally, there's also a little swipe at the industry in there a little bit, because we were teasing the other night talking to some people, and most of these, many of the campaigns come out and they say, everything you wanted and more.
Totally.
And put a whole bunch of those things. Bullshit.
Yeah.
And that really also, I think, resonated really well, that somebody had the cojones to actually come out and say, no, everybody's not, every place isn't for everybody.
Yep.
You know, and,
Yep.
and how can you go do that? And I think that was the honesty and the straightforwardness, and was so refreshing. Is that's one of the reasons it got so much attention, and it did. It got enormous attention.
Yeah, yeah, and I want to get to that in a second, John, about the results from the campaign and what's been going on with that. But Kirk, you said something, as you were talking about really wanting to push it, and we've all been in plenty of meetings with clients of like, I really want to go for it. I really want to push it. I really want to, and then you basically start showing them stuff, and it's like, well, I want to be a little bit more like this. I want to be, different, but like this one, right? I mean, we all go to that. So you guys are bought into the idea. You guys know each other. You're buds. You're helping each other out. You're pushing each other. But you got to sell this into other people. Give me like, how did that first meeting go? It's like, yeah, I'm going to show you an ad about testicles. So sit back and enjoy.
Well, we didn't really approach it quite that way. The thing we did was, and this was on our side, work really close. We have a board of directors and a marketing committee, and we hand carried it and hand held it all the way through. We helped them understand the whole strategy and why it was that way. And they knew the predicament from a marketing standpoint that we were in, this, brand apathy and indifference and stuff. So
yeah.
I really think they were okay with taking the chance. And we have 11 people on that board, and it took a couple of presentations to really buy in. And I think one of the bigger compliments I heard given to the campaign was one of our board members who didn't get it initially say, hey, look at, Nebraska, we're not a boisterous people. We're kind of a humble, more quiet people. And we can't be that way in this market. So you've actually given us a voice that we all like, because I actually think they thought the advertising was very endearing. We did show the governor and the chief of staff and got some guffaws and laughs. So when we were sold, my plan B was quit or run, or run or quit, maybe in that order. But we were comfortable. And when we showed it to the governor, and there was just something about it. And I don't even know if I can put a finger on it. People just liked it.
Yeah.
That's, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what's interesting, that when you go to the website, and again, there's that honest, some of the messaging is poking fun, but I'll tell you, you go to the website, and the copy again is very, again, I'm reading it right here. It's just very honest and upfront, but boy, it's that's not to say that you're shortchanging what you have to offer, because then you start getting into the visuals that are on there. And for someone from Wisconsin who, and again, I've been to the western part, I've spent some time there, you start to sell me a little bit because it speaks for itself. So you're starting to bridge that a little bit with that fun honesty, but at the same time, unless you've been there, there are some cool surprises. It's kind of like we always joke, for people around here who say, go to Illinois or go to Indiana for an outdoor experience, and they laugh at you. And I'm like, well, have you been to Southern Illinois? Have you been to Southern Indiana? It is pretty cool down there. And it's, again, you can find that in Nebraska. You can find other things. You might just not know about it.
Yeah, that got kind of into the actual, the strategy was honesty, but the tactic was start with a negative perception and then thumb your nose at it and say that's not really what the truth is. Like you may have been looking at this geological place out on the west side where there's rock formations, and there was a hiker jumping from one rock to another on it, and the headline said, famous for our flat, boring landscape. And that's the perception. So we just wanted to take the perception and just, put that fire out instantly, and then start talking about the positive things. We did another ad about this activity called tanking, which is they take livestock tanks, because somebody noticed that if it will hold water on the inside, it'll keep water out from the outside. Float that in a river, and get in there and float downstream and have a good time. We did it 2 days in a row. It was a blast. But the headline on that one said, "Lucky for you, there's nothing to do here." And so then the idea was, well, so we invent things to do, and it's a really good tactic. I think it's just great to get people to throw the bucket of water in their face first and then start talking to them, because now you've got
because that's the only way. I think that was the only way we were going to get people's attention, is by agreeing with their perceptions.
Yep.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
Because if, like Kirk said earlier, one of the methods could have been something like, "Oh, it's really not that way here, da 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 da," and people will look at that, and that just gets into the backwash of all the other kinds of advertising, But we were in their face very quickly, and then when they look at that and they say, "Yeah, that place is," we have the crane migration here, and that's nothing but flyover country, and just a whole different meaning for that. So it got to them really quickly. And then the spin is basically you just tell them the truth, and with the honesty platform and the little humor, it worked.
Yeah.
Hey, Kirk, I'm curious about the creative aspect of it. Did you find this when you were initially starting to write the ads and starting to think about it? Did it come to you pretty naturally? Did it come like spilling out, or was this like a process to get yourself to like push it as far as you wanted to push it to?
I think if you read the research documented, but there was actually a PowerPoint presentation that kind of laid out the whole strategy. And once you understand that, it's not that hard. I mean, it seems pretty obvious that what you're going to do is just say, "Okay, here's what you think, but here's what the truth is," and find an interesting way of packaging that message.
So John, you got the ads, you get the buy-in. People like, "All right, go ahead, Mr. Ricks. Here's your lifeline. Go ahead. Here's the rope. We're going to give it to you." You start running the ads. What starts happening? What's the feedback?
Well, I'll go before that. I'll tell you what happened when we announced it. We announced it at our annual conference in Nebraska City, 40 miles from here, on a Thursday afternoon in October, whatever it was, 2018. And this is what happened. There was a dinner that night. The governor was there, and you do all this kind of stuff. And social media was big then, but I'm not a whole lot of big on that. And some of my staff was saying, "Man, it's catching, something's going on." So the next morning I woke up and there was another follow-up meeting, and there was just a buzz in the hotel. This is 250 people. It's not we're not a huge industry here.
Yeah.
Everything was great. This was doing it, that was doing it. And riding home, which is only a 40-mile drive, I got a call from NPR, All Things Considered. And I thought, well, that's pretty damn cool. They want to do an interview that day. And then it all lit up. CNN, Washington Post. I mean, it just went insane. Colbert, that was Thursday. Colbert on Friday night lit it up. And then, Kelly and Ryan, that show, and Good Morning America, it just went crazy. Fortune picked up on it pretty quickly, and their chief strategist there said it was just marketing genius. So, awesome. And all we really did was put out a local press release, and it got picked up on the wire, and it went crazy. Yes, of course, when we felt that, we started feeding it, but it went nuts. It was a 45 days of crazy. We had more publicity value in the first 30-ish days or so than our budget is. It's about 7.5 million, and our budget's only 6.3 at that time.
Wow.
So it was just crazy. We did interviews constantly for 45 days. It was fun, kind of exhausting, but
yeah.
I did live interviews on a radio show in Adelaide, Australia. Go figure that one. So, and then that's all fine and dandy, but even the skeptics then said, well, is it going to work when you start it? So I'll just give you a little idea. 2018 and 19, again, this lodging tax, that's the base of it. So we set lodging tax records in 2018 and 19 right out of the blocks. Let's not do 2020. That's another beast. But lodging tax is only about 20% of total visitor spend, and we broke records for visitor spending for those 2 years significantly. We jumped up to a $3.5 billion industry, and that was huge. Mm-hmm. And then what we found out, and this is important for the whole Nebraska psyche and the tourism industry psyche, in 2018 and 19, it was the first time ever that Nebraska outpaced the national average in economic growth for the industry. So we beat it 2 years in a row, and it's just gone nuts. I mean, the real bottom line, or one of the other bottom lines, is that in those couple years, we brought in about 300,000 more overnight visitors. Okay, it had taken the prior just about 10 years to accumulate that same number. So we did it a little over 2 years what it took the prior 10 to do.
Oh
so
gosh.
It's insane.
It's
craziness. And so, in other words, it was wonderful, creative, but when you stand back and actually look at the economics of it, it's working like crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, John, just out of curiosity, and I might be able to guess, but where are you pulling? You've had some success. Where are these visitors coming from? Is it where I would expect? Are they in that perimeter? Is that bubble right around Nebraska where it's that sweet spot of driving? I want to drive to, I want to get there to from door to door.
I mean, what another big thing that did when I came here, there was to me, a little bit too much heavy emphasis on in-state advertising. I've always been a out-of-state guy because, money spent in-state by citizens, all fine and dandy, but that's just taking money from one pocket and sticking it in another. So we moved everything out of state. So Kirk, we started in Denver at the big pop base. We were able to add Minneapolis into it.
Wow.
Kansas City is pretty familiar, but we're pulling out of Kansas City. And truthfully, even the Des Moines, and we did some work in Wichita. We're not to Chicago yet, but understand that, we were really helped by the widespread publicity because we had visitors from all over the country, and it continues. But our budget is only to the size where, in visiting with our board and even legislators here, it's like, this is all fine and dandy, but we need more money for more eyeballs now. But you had to prove it first. So sure. I think we're getting better at communicating that, and we're having more people listen, because I think the industry, everything here, I call the last 2.5 years just the coming out party. Everything here is just all total upside yet.
So John, now that you've got the home run, and when you go into the governor and say, hey, listen, you're going to have to double my salary and my budget, what happens now with Plan B? Is it just continuing the message, rolling things out, or what happens next?
It's also new. We're just in the process of round 2 in terms of creative. And we ain't going to tell you about it. It'll be out next springish. I think that, and Kirk and I talked about this when we started back in, many of the places I've been, like Wisconsin and Wyoming and Colorado, generally the first hit on the campaign is the one that is really good. And then the second one always seems to not quite get there. I think we have a good or better coming up. I think just playing in that platform and with that kind of thinking and making sure the messaging is integrated through everything. Kirk he doesn't write the visitor guide, because if I asked him to write listings for hotels, he would.
That's a little too creative. That's a little too far out.
Yeah. But
it just transpose numbers in the phone number, and then
exactly.
But the setup for this, like Kurt was noticing before on the website, The lead into the sections all have that built into it. We knew we had to do that. And at that time we had a new website. So it takes a while for all that stuff to be integrated and for us to, but I think the voice now is even more mature. I think it's even more intelligent. And I'm really liking, we're going to shoot in a couple weeks.
That's awesome.
And I've already seen the new print and it's just on. So, and we're not of the ilk to say, oh, let's think of a new motto for next year. We don't do that. I think, and you've learned this from Jennifer Simmons, it's like the really good successful campaigns like the Pure Michigan, they have no intent of changing Pure Michigan and haven't, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I just don't think people give things long enough time to mature.
Totally, John.
And
Right.
and we're going to.
100%.
I think clients in particular like change because they're sitting in their offices looking at this stuff every day and they get bored with it after a short time. It's like consumers are just starting to notice it and you're bored with it, so you really have to be patient and stick with it and wait until it plays out.
Yeah.
And we work on this, I've told our board many times, you're going to be so sick of seeing this stuff because you're, and they don't see it in state, but
right.
Through our meetings and things, I said, just chill, because understand that with all this success, and it's significant, it's only run twice.
Yeah.
Right.
So people talk about burnout. I just laugh out loud. I said, burnout, it hasn't even started yet.
Right on.
Is there, was there something to be said about, obviously, we talk to a lot of brands and our agency, we work with a lot of outdoor brands, and that's one category that just, they've seen success for obvious reasons because people were just flowing to the outdoors. They wanted to recreate, whether it's hiking, biking, whatever it might be. But as we look back, obviously we all know the challenges that came out of the pandemic and what we saw in a lot of 2020, but would there have been some for a destination like Nebraska, knowing what we know about how their behaviors have changed and how their travel habits might have changed, going more towards that safer, closer? I mean, could one say that you were able to squeeze a little lemonade out of that lemon too? I was just kind of curious because there's been that push to that old school, getting back to when we were young, like get the kids back in the car. We're going to drive to the Black Hills. We're going to drive here. And it's not necessarily, let's get on an airplane and fly to, San Diego.
Interestingly, through this whole time period, we worked on a new 5-year strategic plan, and a couple of the noteworthy things in there are exactly what you just said. Many people are finding that old traditional American road trip west that many have forgotten. It's a resurgence now. I think minimalism, during the pandemic and everything, you just became closer to things and more conscious of things, and that everything doesn't have to be a big vacation to somewhere. You can, and this is the kind of people we're targeting. We're targeting the people who like to peel back the onion. Yeah. And I think through the pandemic, that's really what you did. You couldn't go anywhere. So you got back into the little things. And I think that's helped a lot. I think the other thing that's going to help the industry a lot is, and it's kind of backing into it, but Joni Mitchell 100 years ago with her, what is it, big yellow taxi, there was a line in there about, don't you always seem to know that you don't know what you got till it's gone? Well, that's what happened. People now have a better idea of how closely travel and recreation and hospitality is tied into their being, and they learned that because it was taken away from them.
Yeah.
I mean, we had Nebraska Land Days, took place here in June, and they had record-setting everything at that. And the events that are happening around here now, there's record attendance. And people are out. So it's all those things, Kurt.
Pent up demand.
Yep. Yeah, guys, I got a couple questions. I want to fire them off real quick, and then we'll wrap this thing up. John and Kirk, give me your take on just destination websites overall. How do you think about those, John? How do you think about your website, and where does it fit into the mix? Has it shifted at all? I'd love to get your take on that.
Well, first of all, we knew, like I said before, that this messaging had to filter all the way down through. The other thing we did was we take every opportunity and make sure that we push everything to that website, because people haven't shopped. Like we said earlier, Nebraska wasn't on anybody's shopping list. So we push everybody there. And I can just give you an idea of what has happened. Back in 2017-ish, I suppose that we were around 400,000 people to our website. Okay. For the fiscal year, we went over 830,000 in 2 campaigns. And that tells me, and a lot of people don't pay much attention to this, like you said before, we're dinosaurs in this business, and people aren't taking enough time to understand what awareness is, and people aren't understanding that when you see huge increases in your web traffic like that, you're at last, in our case, getting people somewhat interested, so they'll go shop your website. Because in our research, we showed that this brand apathy was so bad that people told us they wouldn't even take the time to research the place because there was nothing there to interest them.
Right.
So this is true. We're for the fiscal year that ended June 30th, we were up from, and last year was the first time we went over 500,000 people. We went to 660. Now we're at 830. For this calendar year, it's different. By the end of 22, we're pacing faster. We're pacing at that's something that will take us over 900,000. So for a place like this that 2-3 years ago didn't get 300,000, 400,000 people to the site, within the next year or so, we might be at 1 million. And that's just simple awareness and interest, getting people interested in shopping. And there's no question that this, honestly, it's not for every one thing is driving it. There's just no question about it.
Guys, when you look out, you guys have been long-term students of the space, and let's throw pure Michigan out. Who else do you look at and go, man, these guys got their act together. These guys have got some good stuff. Who else is doing it well in the space? Kirk, why don't you start off?
From a creative standpoint,
Yeah,
I think Wyoming has a pretty nice campaign. I mean, they'll show you things and it says that's Y and it's WY.
Yep.
It's really clever way of pushing their landmarks and that sort of thing. I think they do a good job. I think some of the bigger states tend to be, the ones that aren't differentiated because it's, they have money enough to do the Chinese water torture kind of advertising. They can just keep dropping pops on your head. And little guys like Wyoming and Nebraska got to take that glass of water and throw it in your face because that's all the water they got,
Right.
And so you tend to see a little bit more adventurous advertising from the people who have to do adventurous advertising. I mean, it's a necessary thing when you're not big.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not one of the biggest states, but one of the favorites I've had for a long time, and I know everybody out there. And in Oregon. Oregon has really been able to develop almost a wonderful feel of the place, a very much sense of place. They've developed their own type style. And, yes, they do have a little advantage because Wyden and Kennedy has done their work forever. And they have that advantage, but it is really paying off for them. It just has a really good feel to it. So yeah, those, and I love everybody in the industry, and God bless them that a lot of the others are just trying to compete like Kirk before about, my waterfall's prettier than yours, or we have restaurants. Well, have you ever been to a place that doesn't have a restaurant? Or, and I always get the craft brewery people in our state a little irritated when I say, having a craft brewery is not a differentiator. You can't swing a dead cat in any state in the country and not hit 20 of them.
Yeah.
So that's the key. And I think that the differentiation here is what drove it. And I think that as an industry, people got to spend a lot of more time in there, because a lot of them they're not really commercial. They're not really advertisements that have ideas or really concepts. They're not paying off a concept. I now call them information announcements. And we don't want to do information announcements.
One question I have for you is, and I'm going to squeeze one in too, Pat, because now it's just Sparta question. So you're right. Regardless of your category, it's very easy to come up with these wonderful ideas when you've got millions and millions of dollars to do whatever. The real creative challenge is when you're trying to make something brilliant come out of a limited budget. In your research, have you found that there's something to be said about people also, and I don't know the answer, I'm really asking, they want to experiment or try to go somewhere that's maybe not on the popular path, whether it's like, because I pay attention to, like you do, Pat, I pay attention to the advertising, and I see what Arkansas is doing, and I see what West Virginia is doing, and those aren't necessarily two places that pop up right away, but I've been to both. They're pretty cool places, and it's not the first place a friend of mine will say, we're going to Arkansas, or we're going to West Virginia. I love both states, and they're beautiful, they should. But are you finding that there's something you said about, like, not everyone's going here, and I am. That's kind of, I don't know. I'm like, have you found anything like that where people want to go to a Nebraska or something like that? Because it's not everyone is yet. I don't know. I ask. I don't know the answer.
Well, there was an anecdotal thing that happened. A woman wrote a letter about how her husband, she was turning 40, and her husband told her that she could pick any place to go in the country. So she had narrowed it down to New York City or Omaha, Nebraska, because of the campaign. And then she said, I'm going to Omaha. So it's like early adopter kind of mentality. They're trying to, like, say, it's becoming cool. I think one of the unmeasurable things about advertising is, does it make you cool? I think in the retail world, Target and Shopko, when it was still in existence, were virtually identical stores. And Target started doing advertising. He started doing marketing versus merchandising. And they became like the darlings of the retail world. And every retailer would say, oh, I wish we could just do stuff like Target. Well, you could. You could do that. But Target had to wait a couple of years before it kicked in. They were patient enough to make that work. And I think that's suddenly, it's Target, and people think it's a cool place, and they didn't change much of anything else about themselves except their own image.
Yep.
Clients never wanted to pay for image advertising because it doesn't make the cash register ring, but I think Target would disagree.
Right on. John and Kirk, thank you so much for your time today. This was fascinating. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks so much, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Anytime.
Cheers.